Hello everyone, and welcome to a brief overview of glazing your work in the ceramics studio at the UC Davis Craft Center. You can find your bisqueware through the back door of the studio against the back wall, on the shelves that look like this. The first step to glazing your piece is to wax the foot. We'll need a couple different things before we get started. The first thing you'll need is wax resist. You can find it above the oxides at the sink, as indicated by the red arrow. You'll also need a wax brush. You can find them on the glazed sink counter. Begin by covering the entire base. We'll do this in 2 times speed, just to speed it up a little bit for you. Once you've covered the entire base, begin waxing the sides of the pot. Remember to wax up high enough so that if glaze drips while the pot is being fired, that it doesn't stick to the shelf. Use this video as a good example of how high up you should wax. Ideally, you should be about 1/3 of an inch above the rim that contacts the surface that the pot is sitting on. If you get wax on your hands during this process, be sure not to touch your piece with that hand. It'll leave unwanted fingerprints in your work. If you haven't chosen a glaze already, you can stop by the glaze example wall behind the electric wheels. They are single tiles made of a light clay body, a medium clay body, and a dark clay body. The top half of each tile is dipped twice. The bottom half of each tile has only been dipped once. As you choose a glaze, be sure to take into account the variations produced by different clay bodies, as well as the coat thickness. Now that you've chosen a glaze and you're ready to go, we first have to mix up the glaze that you intend to use. Each bucket contains its own stir stick that you can use to mix the glaze. You don't have to wash this after you're done mixing. Continue mixing for about a minute until there are no chunks on the bottom, and the glaze itself is about the consistency of 2% milk. Now that we've mixed our glaze, we're finally ready to glaze our piece. This demonstration uses tongs to dip the piece into the glaze. You can find tongs at the glaze sink hanging on the hooks. Grasp your piece firmly with the tongs. Once it's secure, go ahead and dip it into the glaze. Submerge it, count to 1, then pull your pot out. Notice how the pot's being rolled back and forth as the glaze drips out of it. This will prevent excess buildup of glaze on the rim. Once you've dipped your piece, there will be excess glaze that's beaded up on the areas that we've waxed earlier. Use the sponges on the glaze table to wipe this all clean. Do your best to remove all of the glaze from the piece. You can also use the sponge to clean up the edges and make them nice and straight. Once you've wiped off all the excess glaze, you can set your piece down, replace the stir stick into the bucket, and then cover it back up. Be sure to rinse out your tongs and the sponge that you used to wipe your glaze off. This is the ideal distance between where your pot touches the ground and where your glaze begins. Notice that the glaze we used, Temmaku, has a green sticker on it. This means that it tends not to run very much when it's in the kiln. Other glazes, like Anne's Cream, tend to run a lot. Troublesome glazes that tend to run when they're being fired in the kiln are labeled with a runny glaze sticker. Now that you're finished, you can put your work on the to be fired shelf that is right next to the glaze table. Before you leave, be sure to clean up all the tools and things that you used while you were glazing. Remember that the main sink that's on the left-hand side of the studio right as you walk in is the only sink that glaze and any other materials can go down. Thanks for watching.